Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Wicklow Screendance Laboratory 2024. We are coming to you here from Bray in County Wicklow, a town just south of Dublin on the east coast of Ireland. We're being streamed through London and we are going worldwide. So welcome to our audience here at home in Ireland and abroad. A very warm welcome to all of the artists who may be joining us. And I would like to first of all say that this festival has been running, this is our 8th year. And this part of the festival, the online screenings, are a huge, important part of the festival and will continue into the future. So I would like to just say, I would like to give thanks for making it possible for us to put on this festival, giving thanks to the Arts Council of Ireland, to Wicklow Arts Office, Wicklow Community Support Fund, Spotlight Dance Studios, Inchicore College of Further Education, Dublin South City Partnership and Dublin City Council. I'd like to also thank our partners, Mermaid Arts Centre, the College of Dance, Inchicore College of Further Education, Dance Ireland and Spotlight Dance Studios. Finally, I'd like to give a huge thanks to the team who are working with me and making all this work much, much easier and doing a fantastic, stellar job. So a big thanks to producer Carrie Posovitz, Communications and Socials Manager, Sarah Eva Manson, Art Manager, Hannah Slattery, Website Management from Christian Daly, Technical Manager, Rory O'Sullivan, and Digital and Production Streaming, Curtis Rodney. Finally, I'd like to welcome and introduce you to some of our panel, two of our panel members, and also a staff member, a team member here with us tonight. So to introduce the panelists, first of all, we have Owen O'Reilly, and Owen is a graduate of the National College of Arts and Design in Dublin. He graduated with a degree in fine art. His specialisation is printmaking. He has exhibited in Ireland and in Europe, and his practice is expanding into painting and photography. He has also worked in set design and on film. He produced and directed the short film 2 Minutes, and has collaborated on 7 dance films, including Displaced with Linda Higgins and I See His Blood and Contrition with Adrienne Brown. He currently teaches visual art at Inchicore College of Further Education. Also welcoming Colin Carters. Colin is a teacher at Inchicore College in Dublin. He is passionate about creative writing and visual arts and having studied both. He is not a dancer, but he loves the process of exploring movement and narrative through the medium of film. And I would like to also say big hello, welcome in to say hello, Sarah Eva Manson, who is our socials manager.
Hello, everyone. You're very welcome this evening. For the running order of tonight's films is available on the programme, which you can download directly from our website, screendance.ie, and it will be on page 7. And I'll be moderating the chat this evening, so if you have any questions for our panellists, please pop it into the live chat, and I will field it to our panellists. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And we will be looking at the films and then taking pauses in between each of the sections and having an overall conversation. And we really want to invite the audience who is with us virtually to include any comments that they want to put into the chat. We include that in our conversation. So let's move into our first section of films.
He was wounded in the shoulder. He was wounded in the lower back. He was wounded in the stomach. He was wounded in the back of the neck.
So just to put a little bit of context onto this theme of peril and flight, in the past year or two with this festival, we've had a kind of a trope or an underlying area of arts in times of conflict. And some of this came about really in response to when we were in planning for the festival 2 years ago with the invasion of Ukraine, and then the other subsequent areas of conflict that have happened over the world, around the world. But pardon me. But in this particular case, these two films weren't so much directly addressing that particular theme, but nevertheless, they're somewhat touching on them. Owen or Colin, would you like to offer any kind of thoughts about the two films we've seen, or anything that strikes you?
Yeah, well, I suppose with Flight, what we were remarking on was the fact that it is very much a documentation of a performance within a single space. And as such, I mean, it does it remarkably well to be able to work with just that one space with that lighting and those costumes and so on, and to be able to balance that, I suppose, challenge of capturing the entire performance, the choreography as it's using the full space, but also choosing those little moments of close-ups and where the camera was very much moving with the dancers. So I thought that was really, really well done, striking that balance as the filmmakers did there.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah, sorry. But just I think both films, how they work this internal space really nicely and quite differently. Like there was the mood was quite different for both films. With Flight, it was like it starts as quite a frantic movement, and the gestures, as close cameras of this, and you sort of feel you're being pulled in different directions. And the other film, Drill Hall, I thought was quite interesting as well, because it was a little bit further back, but it was still very much an internal space, that was very much defined. And that was quite interesting as well, how the characters almost filled the frame, and just the language, and sort of how it moved, and trying to, when we're thinking about that idea of flight and conflict or whatever, very different, but both very interesting,
Yeah, absolutely. And for our viewers, we have the ability to be in a kind of a virtual green room while the films are on. So Colin and Owen and myself were chatting amongst ourselves and kind of building up our thoughts and our responses. I just wanted to say that these two films are very choreographed, as in, particularly in the first film, well, both actually, but they have these long sequences of choreographed movement, as Owen was saying, the dance being performed on stage and filmed and edited. But we will see then in some other kinds of films that it's quite different. So there's the whole area of screen dance, or video performance, or dance on film, or dance for film. There are many, many ways we can name this art form. But there are many different ways in which they don't all follow any particular path. What did you want to say there, Owen?
And even with Flight and with the emphasis on the choreography, you can still see how much the filmmaking is bringing to it. Like even with the kind of transition from the first section, as Colin was saying, with the very close camera, with the jumpy cuts and with the dissonant music, and even the way the lights were moving around, creating that sense of chaos. And yes, that came from the dancer's performance, but a lot of it came from the filmmaking as well.
Yeah.
And then into the second part, where maybe there's a sense of arrival at some sort of a sense of certainly some sort of calm compared to the first section, where the camera movement slowed down a lot. It was a far more steady kind of effect, where the movement of the dancers became much more apparent. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually on that one as well, there's a moment in Flight, which is it's a frame that's held. The two dancers are held in the middle. It's very painterly, and it looks easier. But I felt at that moment I was actually quite aware of language, or searching for language, because of that close connection with the gestures. That there was a hand on the face, this movement, and almost like you were expecting words or something this year. So it was actually the gestures were really sort of like pulling out this sense of like meaning and language in at that moment of time, and then it moves back outwards again into the dance and this connection, and which is quite interesting.
Yeah, that's a very interesting sort of narrative perspective, Colin, because people who are maybe, as myself, coming from the dance background, we are sort of aware that movement and dance is a language, but yet it's interesting to hear your perspective as somebody who's more really versed in the writing and Owen in the filmmaking and art, that we're seeing things, we're seeing the same thing, but seeing them different perspectives. Yeah, it's really good. We also had some comments around the wheat. We're all very interested in the wheat. The set, very beautiful set, really. These kind of sheaves of wheat and what they might represent.
Yeah, it's funny, like it was just that very simple, very subtle touch for the wheat, and that when we were talking, well, this was happening, and basically the context of what the film was about, and then thinking about like maybe the Ukrainian context of wheat, and it's as a mass producer. We weren't even sure if it was wheat or if it was this year, but the fact it was really the only present geography, I suppose, it was located within the film. So that was quite, and that ends on that moment as well. Like the end credits run with the wheat growing up into the frame. And I think that's something that sort of it's there, and even if it's true or not, that's the image that we took with it, and
Yeah.
I ran with that and thinking about, yeah.
Yeah, and in Drill Hall, there's a powerful presence as well from something which wasn't the location and wasn't the dancers, and that was the ball bearings, the marbles, and we were chatting a bit back and forth about the significance of these, because obviously when a filmmaker makes the decision to put something very present like that into a film, you're thinking, okay, well, is there a metaphor here? Is it symbolic, or is it much more open than that? Yeah, I found them quite really interesting to look at. I mean, especially the way the dancer was arranging them in a very regimented little shape, making the little squares with them, and the notion of drill. So presumably it's a drill hall, where maybe in some sort of military context, so there's this preparation for war, and it's this idea of lining up and ranks and so on. And then there's a shattering noise, and they're scattered across the floor. Very powerful.
Yeah.
And a complete change of mood then into that second section, which I really enjoyed, where you had this contrast between these very regimented and drill-like movements of the dancers, where very straight arms and repetition movement, and then cutting to, a dancer falling. And again, we have these ball bearings being scattered around the place. Yeah, I mean, very powerful stuff.
Yes, it's a very beautiful film, and Jude Walton, the filmmaker, has another film later. It's the second last film as well. It'll be interesting to compare and contrast them. I also feel that second film, The Drill Hole Project, is very evocative with the music and the costuming, which seems to put these women in around about the maybe 1940s. And we were commenting about a sense of their maybe resignation, or I noticed actually there was a section towards the very end where they had certain gestures of tamed grief, but nevertheless some kind of grief, with hands to the head in particular ways. And there's something about Apologies about that. Apologies about that momentary disturbance in our stream, but we're back up and running. So we'll just finish off our conversation. Colin, were you saying something there about the drill hole project?
Yeah, I think I think you left me there. We're just talking about that moment with the balaclava image and how that sort of like is a separation in the process of the film, whatever. But this character appears very different, very distinct, really.
Yes.
And I suppose I think I would like to see more of how that in the emotional stakes being ramped up as to you know. Because I find like the Waltzing Matilda is a very emotional piece of music.
Yeah.
That history of it there, and almost like you were saying earlier, like that idea of these women being resigned, you know, like the hand gestures, like the, you know, like these very sort of like newsworthy sort of images and moments, which I think is quite very contemporary, you know. You know.
Yes, and I happened to notice that the dancer with the balaclava was doing a sequence that was extremely rooted in classical ballet, the milieu of classical ballet. So it was kind of an interesting contrast between this balaclava. I thought it was a really arresting moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the overall mood of the piece, and especially with the, you know, with the little hint of waltzing Matilda at the end, and the overall melancholy mood of the music, you know, I think it is more of a reflective piece, Colin, rather than, you know, trying to confront the horrors of war head on. It's almost trying to absorb it in a much more deeper communal kind of way. There is a, as you said, a resignation, a quietness that's almost about the way it's handled.
Yeah, yes. And I would have to say also, similar to the first piece, it was very choreographed, as in all the action that takes place is done through the medium of choreographed movement, except for some of this, the places where there might be the scattering of the ball bearings and so on. But it is, these two films are very notable for that fact, and that the continuation of the dance movement as it's happening in the dancer's body gives the impetus and the, if you like, the energy to the performers, where we'll see, again, with many others aspects of the screen dance world, we'll see very different ways of projecting the moving body, sometimes not so in such a dance, traditional dance way, let's put it. So let us move on to our second group of films, and we'll return after that for further conversation.
Inventory of places one must go alone. Into the imagination, reflection. The layers of the self reveal leaf by leaf. Every turn of the page, confronting one's own ignorance and limits. Knowledge corroding the brink and edges of an education, perpetually treading over the boundary of incompetence. Here are the creeds and articles, sermons and common prayers, botany, metaphysics, astronomy, ethics, the animal world. The nomenclature of all living things under heaven. myself bound in vellum, on parchment, or beyond a broken seal of wax, perhaps of note within a private letter. I hear no voices like my own, and cannot find my life of service mirrored here, anywhere among the lists of these remarkable men, be they dead or living, lieutenants and lord justices, aldermen, chancellors, fellows, physicians, surgeons, collections of ports and districts, barrack masters, commissionaries, attorneys, criers of the forecourts, officers of the workhouse, governors of garrisons and the Blue Coat Hospital, all have shelf room, shoulders, order, space. Outside each window is weather, air, the limitless. The glass between me and all otherness. I am defined. Articulated in clean lines, quills, love letters. A ball of blue. Willow. The cure for cramp. All in ribboned pockets at my waist, teeming secrets. A salve for my clipped wings. The housewife ready, armed with a humble thimble. Snuff. A paring knife beside a pincushion. A lover's ring. A peep of cambric handkerchief. coins for gambling. A wrap of knit bone for a poultice. Sciatica bones. Dandelions for tea. A sprig of mistletoe for all those stolen kisses. Feverfew and fennel. Nettle. Burdock. Chicory. If this is the essence of what I am permitted to possess, it stands to reason I am always ready to run. The world has named my limits and my destiny. Here are my meridians, my latitudes. The keepers have index, ledger, key and bird's eye view. The locus and the means to navigate the features of relief, the contours, the advantages of degradation, the lie of treacherous seas, townlands, bogs, advantages in battle, grazing rights, the means of taxation. We others occupy silence and the spaces in between. The time has come when even silences, especially silences, take space. Occupy air, claim names. Become a book of things, a catalogue and history. So be unafraid of solitude. Curious and uncertain, be an outlier, a subject of discussion, scrutiny. Sin, if necessary. We are not meant to starve in claims of innocence, but feast a while on all that is low-hanging within grasp, falling in abundance at our feet and there for the taking. This is a county of orchards, the fruit of knowledge everywhere. All this belongs to you, whoever you are. The doors are open. The whole world is in and out of kilter at the tip of a nimb. time is ribboned tight, tighter. A soul borrowing freedom on the powdered wings of butterflies.
Living to get by, numb the hue and cry, choose a death ear. And turn, try to make ends meet, survival week to week, never knowing which way to turn, patiently align, waste precious time, never question why, body was well, sedentary snare, technology of how the devil may care, just turn, turn, turn. House to work routine, finely tuned machine, caffeine booster, prefer to juicer. Thank God for coffee. Now at least I feel like I can turn, suited, sharp and smart, boots counterpart, hairstyled, nails filed, got the hair done. Let's take a selfie. Today at least I look like I can turn, running here and there, endless thoroughfare. Stay on treadmill, just keep on moving, whatever, do not stop. I need to stay on top at every turn, 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 turn. Bonnie talks, spirit walks. Bonnie talks, spirit walks. Bonnie talks, spirit walks. Emptiness inside, looking good disguised, fooled by foolish pride. We turn, brand adorned, we boast the weekend, we all toast, silver screen ideal, reality conceals, big day of the dream, wrinkle free, pristine, we turn, 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 turn. consume a watershed, must have madness, ease of sadness, escape reality through retail therapy, the new theology for this society. Dancing into debt, creditor roulette, bitterness exist, and praying that the tables will turn muzzles again, austerity, contempt, borderline agenda, kills the vision splendor, racing thoughts no sleep, stuck upon repeat. Another night of torture, toss and turn, 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 turn. Desolate, desperate, disconnect, distress. Cog and fortune's wheel blindly guided, liberty the dream, and wishing that the tide would turn. Powerless we wait, the sphere overtakes our destiny enslaved, as she seals fate with just one turn, turn. Hängt die ganze Leben
And welcome back, everybody. So I'd like to say a warm welcome and a big hi to Victoria O'Brien and also to Linda Shermer. And I know we have a few other friends who are online with us at the moment. Please feel free to put anything into the chat. I just answered that question. Both were asking where was the library in the first in Bind. And we discovered that it's Armagh Library, the oldest library in Northern Ireland that has over 42,000 works, collected works. So we've had three very interesting films here. Any thoughts, Owen, on either of them or any of them?
What was the first one?
The first one was Bind, and that was the one in the library.
Yeah, I mean,
with the three dancers.
Visually absolutely amazing. The contrast of the white costumes against, you know, the dark of the wood of the floor and the books, and then the visual reference between the crinoline, you know, the skirt hoops and the bars on the window. The whole thing was just, it just felt so coherent visually. That really struck me. And just the use of the space as well. You could really tell that the choreographer and the filmmaker and the costume designer, they'd all been to the space and worked this out, and the use of the space was amazing. The windows, the little narrow spaces between the books. It just everything about it just felt absolutely right in terms of that visual treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, one of the things that I enjoyed very much was the movement, the tight performance, as in tightly rehearsed, very, very beautiful, precise performances. And some of the movements, which to me seemed to be very much mimicking closing and opening pages, where they were lying across the desk with their arms outstretched and closing and opening and that kind of thing. And just very lovely. And as you were saying, Colin, you had some interesting comments regarding the woman who was sitting at the desk.
Yeah, I thought that the whole piece was lovely. I thought it felt like an imagined space, like the woman sitting at the desk, and then this dance comes alive within her, and the words are sort of like coming up in the text as well. I said it reminded me actually of Virginia Woolf, and there's this particular short story about Virginia Woolf, The Mark on the Wall, which she talks. It's all about, you know, like things like, you know, questioning her place as a woman in history. And this is very much this as well. Like Virginia Woolf as her character, staring off into space, trying to make sense of what a mark on the wall is. But she's sort of going like, what is it? The almanacs, the encyclopedias, you know, antiquaries, like who puts the history in place? And really, with this is very much the language is coming up here is there's no place for the woman. That she can't find herself almost within this space. So we've got this beautiful setting, we've got this beautiful library, and I think it's quite interesting with it. You know, that the words are like, you know, it's a, you know, it's essence of what I can be, what I'm permitted to possess. The world has named my limits. You know, within a library of education, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
There's lots of phrases that pop out in the poetry. I think how the dance then, you know,
and there was a moment when they had all the maps out on the tables, and it was about that, you know, defining the limits, and they were inspecting the maps with the magnifying glass. Where am I? I'm not here.
Yeah.
And then they rolled them up and took them out. They cleaned. There was all of these movements of cleaning the tables, sweeping them clean. And that's when the performance really took off, and where, you know, they had the repeated dancers on the upper level, and the movements became so much more, as you described, Colin, just the energy and the rhythm of it, where this, I suppose, we're almost going back into, you know, the imagined space of the woman at the desk, you know, and it's her movement from that constraint that we saw earlier on in the piece, and it's echoed with the corsets and the crinoline, and even the male dancer had a kind of a binding on, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And also some of the movements that were embedded in the choreography were very much about inscription, or it appeared to me, inscribing somehow with their fingers or their body movements as well. These very precise and gestured movements that looked to me almost like it was a physical dance manifestation of the text on the page that is housed in the library. How the different texts that we work with the text of the written word, the text of the danced word, and also the poetry, the text of poetry in this film was really very beautiful.
Yeah, I
Very,
found it really interesting. There's just a quick thing that it's in some of the movement where you had your three dancers, the male dancer was in the middle, and he was doing a very controlled, repetitive movement where the two dancers were almost like satellites. And it was just an interesting take on it to put the male dancer in the center of the frame, whether it was a comment on reflecting the kind of the theme of the piece. It was an interesting decision.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And we know there were, of course, in all of three of these films, there was some element of textual influence. So in the second film, we had a turn. So we were commenting about this while we were talking about it, about the possibility that the song came first. Colin, you had some thoughts about that.
Yeah, it felt very much like for myself anyway that I think maybe that the words of the song had given, it felt at the forefront, and then the dance was filling in around this, but it was actually about that, almost the closeness. And I think how the filmmaker trying to articulate what was happening and what was being said, and the imagery within that very confined space, and these monitors reflecting backwards. And I thought it worked really well. Like there's real internal, external imagery going on, like a fight or a confrontation taking place as well between the character, the woman in the film.
Sorry to cut across you. The two manifestations, how she depicted herself in these very sort of these kinds of movements, very hard movements in one sense, and then the more fluid and floating ones when she was in her other embodied self. Kind of interesting.
And even the color, there was this, as what was Colin was saying, this very icy blue, this almost institutional, those greens coming through. And then when it was that other version of herself, when she had a bit of color in the costume and we could see a little bit of nature outside, it was an interesting contrast as well.
The other thing is that this woman, Anita Mahan, is a very well-known vocal artist based in Wexford. And there would be a sense I would have that that her main vehicle of performance is through the voice. And also we were commenting that at a certain point we could see tears in her eyes. So this is a very emotional performance for her. And it seemed to be coming at the point where the softer, more the fluid embodied part of her was coming towards her, and there was coming to that moment where they were somehow squaring up to each other in some way. But it was quite an emotional performance for her.
And it certainly felt at that moment when the harder version was on the ground and kind of pushing the other one back, it really felt like that it was the first one, the harder one, the more edgy one, she seemed to be winning. And it seemed to be, that was kind of the emotional journey that was there.
And yet sorry, Colin, wasn't the song also very mantra-like, repetitive, and quite simple, really? It was just a simple chorus that went on. Sorry, Colin, go ahead.
I just was saying, like, she seemed quite unhinged,
yes.
Like, the character became more and more unhinged. But I think it was quite a fascinating that it was in the middle between the two pieces, because the first piece of Bind, where the woman is almost ignored from history and ignored from this year, and which we'll see later in the final piece, that the third of those was the Maiden Blossoms, where it's almost like this descriptions of how to be a woman, these sort of quite cliche, awful descriptions, and in this internal one, you've got this woman who's sort of like, is struggling with and almost sort of seeing herself on screen as well, like how it documents their screen. There's lots of layers within turn that sort of
And as you were saying, the presence of the screens are really effective as well, whether it's on the mobile phone or these little monitors. It's this external messages that are coming in, and like the little wire is feeding into this screen, and it's telling her what she has to do, what she has to be, how she has to.
Modern world, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, TVs or phones.
And moving on then to the final film in that section, Made in Blossoms. So this is set to a song cycle by Strauss, and these we were seeing the words and hearing them also. And then what would you feel about that film, which was really 4 films in one?
Yeah, they're very different visually, and even the performance and the movement were quite different. But there was a very similar narrative in all 3, where it was this character who was, experiencing the pressure of what was in this 100-year-old lyric. And there was, in each of them, there was a moment where there was release, whether it was throwing the flowers in the bin, or whether it was the very dramatic moment in the Ivy one with the blood on the face. So there was a very strong connection between the 4 films, but very different as well. I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I believe it was 4 different filmmakers making the 4 films.
Yeah. Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting the way there was the first, as we said, there's 4 different things. We had the cornflower, which was sort of at home, very neutral color palette. We had the 2 poppies, which is very red. We had ivy, which is very blue palette. We had the water lilies, which is very white. And I actually liked how the first one, which was quite natural, quite, understated, almost, came first and set up these other more dramatic ones. But, I sort of liked how, I know I was going against what you were suggesting, but I actually liked how it led the way, and it was almost like this person at home, struggling. And then you have this very glamorous out and these amazing sets, like beautifully filmed, beautiful gestures, within this really highly finished, film pieces.
Yes, I completely agree. And more I reflect on what you said there, Colin, I think that first film within those in Maiden Blossoms was essential, actually, because if we had gone into the other 3 more exotic and, beautiful visually and sort of sensuous and sumptuous films, I think it wouldn't have had the same effect. And I think it also, like, one of the things I find interesting about this film is that the lyrics speak about this kind of idealized notions about women and about love and about life and about the poetry of life. And yet in the first film, this woman is, wearing a simple t-shirt and getting very frustrated and trying to do something over and over again. And she places us then in the present, where we are now, then looking back through the lens of the song cycle, this idealized world, and where the woman somehow plays an idealized part. But yet there's something I was feeling that could be read into the lyrics of the songs that can be a little bit sinister. And I felt that the dancer pushed through that barrier of the kind of the idealized world, because she was a very strong performer and very, I don't know what the word is, raw, I think is the word I'm looking for. So within this beauty and the beauty of the lyrics, there's a rawness. So I really
it's interesting what you said about the first one, and it's grounding in reality. And then the next one has a certain grounding in reality with the car and so on. And then the third one is this completely abstract space. And then in the last one, we're coming a little bit back more to now, as it were. And then that final scene where it's just the dancer against the sky was far more powerful because of it. Yeah, no, I've written down here the kind of, what was really interesting was the conflict between the words that were on the screen were being said, because I wasn't listening, I don't understand the language, so I was reading it, but the words that were on the screen and what we were seeing in terms of the dancer. So, even in the first one, she is content is what's coming up as a translation. This is the moment where the dancer is at her lowest, it's broken down. And that continued in through all of the films. There was this incredible juxtaposition between the words and the image.
Yes, exactly. And I do love that. I love the control of the image from the filmmakers. It feels like, I'm using the word polished, and it sounds maybe a bit surfacey, but there's such they're so conscious, the filmmakers, of the image they want to arrive at. It's not one of those screen dance films where there's a certain amount of improvisation and it just is how it is kind of thing. This is
Mm.
very, very planned and well executed, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of having looked at all the 5 films that we've looked at so far, like actually it's quite interesting, this real underlying theme of womanhood and, you know, identity and femininity and how that comes out and comes to the fore, you know. And in these ones here, we've actually framed them like that, and putting the 3 of these together. I think it's yeah, like I think there's a lot of underlying issues sort of that are there, you know, that they haven't gone away. And I think how we resolve that is it's wonderful to sort of try and think of actually how, you know, it's a very interesting way of thinking of how dance and text and song allows us to traverse history from like the Strauss dialogues, but also to Waltzing Matilda, to those, you know, historical narratives.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, we could talk for hours. Let us go into our next section of films and we'll return and continue the conversation.
Khoảng thời gian ở trong 4 bức tường, xung quanh là đất, nhiều chấn sông, lại là điều kiện để tôi tìm thấy tự do đích thực trong mình. Và ngày trở về quê hương, nơi có rất nhiều những kỷ niệm yêu thương, nhưng mọi thứ không còn ở đó nữa. Những ký ức đẹp đẽ dường như đã sụp đổ. Thay vào đó là vô vàn những chấn sông vô hình được dựng lên trong tâm trí của những người xung quanh. Ngục tù trong tâm trí đáng sợ hơn là những chấn sông. Tôi gặp lại Khang, người đã cùng tôi lớn lên và trải qua rất nhiều kỷ niệm đẹp. Tôi nghĩ ngọn lửa trong tôi và ngọn lửa trong Khang sẽ luôn cháy mãi. Khang đã trở thành một người tiếp nối, giữ lửa như ba của anh ấy trước đây. Đây là một công việc vất vả, phải làm liên tục trong vòng 3 tháng, bất kể ngày đêm. Không phải người bình thường nào cũng đủ lòng dũng cảm, sự kiên nhẫn và tình yêu để làm. Sau một khoảng thời gian rất lâu không được nhìn thấy khung cảnh tuyệt vời đó, ngày trở về, tôi lại được trông thấy những điều thiêng liêng. Mỗi lò gạch với tôi như một đền thờ, và mỗi một người thợ làm gạch giống như một vị thần giữ lửa. Khang ơi!
Về rồi hả?
Mọi người đâu hết rồi?
Mọi người đi hết rồi. Không ai làm việc cả.
Là vẫn hoạt động bình thường mà.
Lần này là lần hoạt động cuối cùng rồi. Qua Tết sẽ đóng cửa. Không có kinh phí để duy trì, cũng không có đủ tiền trả cho công nhân nữa.
Giờ bắt đầu lại được đúng không?
Không. Ai thì đã mất rồi. Phương thì đi mất trong mấy năm qua. Chỉ có mình Khang chống chọi ở nơi này. Bây giờ ngân hàng không cho mình vay nữa, không thể tiếp tục được. Phương quay về cũng đã muộn rồi.
Khang thì sao?
Khang để tìm được công việc mới ở Sài Gòn. Ngày mai sẽ đi. Ở đó có lẽ sẽ tốt hơn.
Tôi thấy trống rỗng. Tôi tự hỏi mình, tôi phải làm sao vào lúc này, khi những người yêu thương quanh mình dần dần rời bỏ. Con người sống trong thời hiện đại, trong đô thị đông đúc, người sát người nhưng lại xa nhau. Những gì đẹp đẽ trong quá khứ, từ bàn tay con người, từ những giọt mồ hôi, những thứ thiêng liêng, dường như đã bị quên lãng. Những chấn sông ấy là nỗi sợ, là sự tức giận, và nối tiếp đó là guồng máy công nghiệp cuốn con người xa khỏi nguồn cội. Làm sao để tự do giữa rất nhiều những chấn sông trong tâm trí của con người xung quanh? Nhưng cái gì là sự thật? Cái gì là còn mãi? Ai sẽ là người giữ lửa? Nhà máy máy dừng, con người dừng, ngọn lửa dừng. Sự sống dường như không còn ở nơi đó. Tôi thấy trống rỗng. Tôi thấy mình lạc lõng. Tiếc nuối, giận dữ, sợ hãi, không thể thay đổi quá khứ. Điều mà tôi nghĩ mình có thể làm bây giờ là đối diện với thực tế. Bây giờ anh làm ở đây à?
Tới đây hả? Từ đây mình thấy được cả Sài Gòn nữa.
Cao quá.
Hoa nắng rơi, nắng đưa em về miền cao gió bay, áo em bày giờ mưa xa ném mây, gọi tên em mãi suốt cơn mê này. Tôi xin ơn đời trong cơn mê này, gọi mùa thu tới. Tôi đưa em về, chân em bước nhẹ, trời buồn gió cao. Đời xin có nhau, dài cho mãi sau, nắng không gọi sầu.
And so those two films both had at their heart something to do with urbanization, claiming natural spaces in some way. I'd like to just ask, do you guys have anything you wanted to say? Colin, for example? How do you respond?
Yeah, I suppose I could look in there. I thought they were quite interesting films. They're quite a different feel about them. And the first one was quite a contained space, this urban generated space. And I suppose within that, I was quite drawn to the small gestures, these small movements that one character was doing, that the other character was then trying to echo as well, and just this way of connecting through these very subtle movements, gestures, connecting. How do figures connect? And I think within an urban space as well. And I think then when we join into the other one, it's very similar how the filmmaker is, aside from the dance, is sort of quite drawn to just everyday movements and actions as important as dance as well. You know, that everything then becomes part of that dance landscape, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think that the overriding thing then is that urban landscape.
Yes. And what do you think, Owen?
You know, very striking, the contrast between the two films in terms of scale of production. You know, on the first one, Current, you know, you could easily have been done just the two dancers and just one person with a camera, whereas it's obvious in the second one it's a huge production. And it's interesting as well in the, you know, even with that minimal language of the first one, there was quite a lot in it. And as Colin was referring to, those very contemplative movements, that kind of hesitancy that came across, especially, and the way the camera was so tight into a lot of the movements, really concentrating, like the slightest little movement of a finger along a sleeve. And then it was echoed. There was a scene where there was a little ripple on the water and there was a piece of grass moving very slightly. And it was just this kind of connection with nature that was definitely there. And then it would switch to a different scene where it was maybe just a female dancer against the wall. And then there was the building materials, looked like bamboo or something. And then the camera was much further away and it was a kind of a slightly more distant shot. Like there was a lot in it. And, you know, in spite of such a simple language, it really carried a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mary Stedman is with us in the chat. Hi, Mary. She was with us on Sunday, and we will be seeing one of her films very shortly. So she, regarding Current, this piece we've just been a film we're just talking about, she really enjoyed how they were experiencing the place. Their movements derived from it in such an intimate way. I think that's a very apt description indeed. And I think if we compare the movement in Current with some of the films at the beginning that we saw, very choreographed, very strong dance phrases with strong dance technique, I think it's more towards improvisation, it would seem to me, but very sensitive improvisation, very clear that they had very strong connection with each other, the two dancers. Yeah, it really is interesting. And regarding the second film, Urban Genesis, I was just making the comment that it's probably the only film tonight that has some aspects of documentary and also drama, because there are characters and there's a script. Sorry, there's a script. That's what I want to say. But I was also very taken by their performances as two movers and actors and performers, that they were so beautiful to watch, and so there was such deep emotion, and yeah, it's very moving, really. I found it a very beautiful. I think it's a wonderful film. I think it's an absolutely, as
Colin,
you said,
you were saying about the setup at the start and how we were drawn into this cinematic narrative, and then that jolt of dance, and how you felt it, the two kinds of filmmaking, communicated with each other.
Yeah, I think it's probably at the. I was waiting for dance moves, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not a dancer, hands up, but I was waiting for that to kick in. And it actually just felt very cinematic. There's a story being played out. There was, there were characters there. And then there was a moment, I think, where it's this figure standing in the mud and just twisting, and it was beautiful. But it actually I was sort of thrown backwards to all the movements then become part of this movement. Like, nothing is distinct, and you could see that with the filmmaker. Outside of that, then I think that scene of that first real sort of gestural movement ends with two boats just pulling apart, which I thought was quite a tender. It's very physical. It wasn't with people. It was actually something physical being pulled apart as well. And I thought that was just, I was going, okay. And then I started looking out and having to reread everything that was there. Like, the subtleties, which I could see in the first film, Current, was still there. It was like the filmmaker was just loving all types of movement and gesture.
Yeah, that was really well observed by you as well. The repetitive nature of the movements of working in the factory, moving the bricks, or cutting the clay and so on, and how that muscle memory is totally ingrained into the body, similar to a dancer would learn, or express their movements. And then, the drama of the character, not being able to do that anymore because the factory is closing and so on. And what becomes of those movements then, and what becomes of all of the objects, and that expression of himself. And I think that was, really well picked up on by you.
Yeah, it felt like the last waltz. Like, it was like the factory was closing. Everything that you spent your lifetime doing is now defunct. And I think that's probably quite universal for people when they lose their jobs. To think, how they move in a space, a building. You have to relearn. Like, even the woman in that film, where she moves from the factory into this other building. She's getting up a lift and she has to move different. You have to carry yourself different. Your whole deportment is altered. I think that's, beautiful setting, actually. And it was
and then within the structure as well, that where you become aware of the dance-like movement of the everyday movements and the work and so on. But then the pieces that were put in, which were more pure dance, they felt absolutely right in those moments. It wasn't like, a 1940s musical where suddenly they're gone off out of the story to do a dance number. It absolutely worked in. It was almost like, as you were saying in reference to Bind, that kind of imagined space, so the two characters arrive at the factory, and, she's been away, and, he's getting on with the work. But then there's a moment that totally communicates the internal processing that's going on. In filmmaking, you're always trying to, well, how do you communicate the drama to the audience? And you might be using dialogue, or you might be trying to do it through juxtaposition of images, but here they're using movement to try and communicate that moment. How am I processing this? And it's almost though the character is still going through the everyday movement, but somewhere in their mind, this other thing is happening. Really perfect.
Yeah. I think there's a level of precision probably that comes with dance, where everything is so precise and has to go there. In the same way, if you're working in a factory, that precision is, you know, it's not referred to as a dance, but it totally is, like that way your body moves from carrying a brick, stacking bricks, cutting the bricks. It was actually lovely seeing just the process of that as well, from that you know, your man standing in the mud, you know, that's just that richness, which in currents as well, like I'd give me a goo to just want to stand in muddy water. You know, just there's a real sense of like how you move in that, to like that uncertainty underfoot. You know, it was yeah, I think,
and every frame and every background was so carefully considered, like the pattern of the bricks with the grid of the holes at the edges of the bricks, and then how it cut to the shots of the skyscrapers with their grids of windows, and how one has been replaced by the other. Quite a simple device, but worked really, really well there.
Yeah, I do feel that this filmmaker Foulet really can control the output and the planning, and he has I feel a very clear eye towards what he wants to do. And I think it's a seamless interaction of naturalistic everyday movement, the story being told through the operation in and around the factory, and then these moments, as you say, where they break into movement, dance movement, which is, it just belongs. It's part of the dialogue, really. It's really quite masterful, I think, in this. It's really very noticeable. Yeah,
I think the opening phrase of the film as well, I think, is quite telling. You know, during the years I spent in jail, I learned to find freedom within myself. When I returned to the village, all my memories were gone. You know, it's a wonderful thing of like changes, you know, changes taking place, whatever. We're trying to rediscover something, which is
it's wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we will probably now move into our final section of films and return then afterwards.
Great.
Ori. Oida.
Oh, sorry.
Ori. Tommy.
Bouge envers mes mains, bouge envers mes mains.
So we've seen 3 films there, from the miniature to the very, very long extended film. Any comments regarding any of those from either Colin or Owen?
Yeah.
Well, the first one was Egress, was it? Yeah, Egress. You know, huge amount in a very short film, very small amount. But you know, an amazing sense of the place. We were talking when it was on about that sense of a place having an effect on you in terms of your response to it. And Colin was talking about a kind of a drive to perform in space like that.
Lovely looking space like that. That was a quarry or something. I'd say very cool. So bravo to the dancers as well. Yeah, I think at this point as well, like I'm looking for a connection between, you know, just going back through our things as well. And maybe that idea of like of why does somebody dance in a setting, in a context, in a different space? Like, what is it about their movement? What is it that's the way that they're going to articulate, you know, and make sense of their environment? You know, we were talking about that, you know, off screen, I suppose, about connecting it to current. You know, that other one by the Berg duo, like in Indonesia, like this sense of like just being somewhere and just trying to, and it was lovely. It was very short, very tender piece of like these people that ends with this floating, this sort of, they're almost like the thing that's happened all evening. They're superimposed into their setting, like they're floating, and then we've got dual layers going on as well.
Yeah, I think there was a real sense of weight in the space. You know, you're there and you're surrounded by all of these stones, and how they were, you know, there was a concentration on the feet in the film, and the sense of the weight walking on these stones, and then they were lying on the rocks, and again they were being pulled down. And then there's a moment when you only see the female dancer's feet, and she's wearing these fairly heavy boots, but suddenly she rises up, and it's almost like she's floated. And then you see that, okay, she's been lifted, but and then the cut to them in the water, and that weightlessness of being in the water. Yeah, really, really evocative.
Yeah,
very,
I feel the same.
Very tightly done. Like, you know, every single little section had its place within it.
Yes, there's something about this miniature, or I don't mean miniature, but just a short film that manages to really make a statement. And I felt that there was something too that was so beautiful about the two bodies lying down on nature and just resting on nature. Something about the power of nature and the world and the natural world in not encompassing or drawing the human into it somehow, so that the human becomes just sucked into nature in some kind of a way. I found that last scene of a shot of the two dancers in tadpoles or something. It was so beautiful. It's very magical, actually.
Yeah.
There was a lot of magical energy in the film, in the way it was done, the way it was put together. Yeah,
Very
it was very
striking as
powerful.
well. The red clothing on the male dancer as well. It was, you know, standing out against the dark rocks. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Nice palette, you know. Like,
yeah.
It's quite interesting how it brackets, you know, the other two films, Atmospheres, and then you have this really long film, the longer, like it's almost the shortest, the longest, you know, either side, and they are both, you know, they're responding in some ways to nature. Like it's full of like the sounds of nature, like the wind and the rain, the hail, like it's the torrents of there, and you're getting that sense furthering from Egress of being somewhere and trying to, well, what do I do here? I'm here now. But in Atmospheres, you also have that in response to nature. You know, I'm going to stand out in the wind and I'm going to see how my body moves, or it's lashing rain, and I want to see how, okay, what do I do in the rain? You know, and to think about it, to slow it down, and you know, it's one is about place and this is about the other, it's just the elements.
And that really interesting contrast between, as you said, you know, the dancer out in the rain and embracing that and moving with the wind and so on. And then the shot, you know, the couple of the split screen shots where they're in an interior space, and it's almost like it is the definition of inside. It's a room with a very simple red floor and a white wall, and we've a window here and a door. Like if someone asked you draw a room, you know, this is what you would draw. And that then it's this movement within that space, you know, very confined movement. And as you were saying, Adrienne, about you know, the meaning within the movements, as you were saying, it was very much a response to this confinement within the room and the space and expressing that.
Yeah, I felt that there was something too in that film about exploring where the world meets the skin somehow. So whether it be the nature, the rain or the wind, or in the case in the room, it's almost like the invisible space around the dancers there. I found their movements very, very tactile within this airspace somehow. So as though they were touching and feeling the air. That's what was coming to me. And I also thought that the use of I loved that kind of the 2-camera shot and how it was edited with the split screen. It was very visually engaging.
But
So
very restrained use of the technique as well, because it would be so tempting as a filmmaker to, oh, let's have a bit of fun with this and do all sorts of visual trickery with it. But it was very restrained. It was just, here's one angle, here's the other. And as you were saying as well, it reminded you of that kind of cubist view of seeing two things from the same angle at once, which very much, you know, hammers home the three-dimensional nature of the space.
Yeah, it seems to be a kind of an interrogation into space, whereas I felt, sorry, excuse me, egress was almost like the natural world draws the human into the natural world to lay down on the natural world. But this film was more, atmosphere was more to do with how we perceive ourselves in relation to the world around us in kind of split screen and cubist ways. I'm getting a little bit lost in my thoughts. I think I'm probably speaking. Colin, come in and rescue me.
No, I think you're totally right. I think it's probably that creative process of how do you make sense and process your environment, whatever way that comes, like, you know, whether it's like through Picat, like through the split screen, through looking at and trying it in painting or in different forms, or you know, like even having within atmospheres, like having 2 cameras there was almost like, okay, let's see, there'll be 2 sides to this here. We'll see what's happening here, which you can trace that back into other films throughout the evening as well. That sort of, there's multiple layers and multiple perspectives on show, and the dominant one is not necessarily always the correct one or the right one to be looking at. You know, it's you're trying to make sense of and moving around, and I think that's like we were talking about and you had made the point about how the dancer, I think was it within Celia, even the camera person is part of that process as well, of dancing around trying to capture the movement. So it's actually it's an additional dance that's not on the screen, but it's very much part of that recording of the dance as well.
Which was, you know, noticeably absent from Atmospheres. The camera was almost exclusively static and just enjoying being there and encompassing the space. Whereas then in Celia, it was, you know, this performance almost with the camera, you know, and you would definitely get the sense that as it was filmed that, you know, you could see in some of the shots too where maybe 3 dancers there and they were all working together. So you'd almost get the sense, okay, well, while one is performing, the other dancer has the camera and is responding to the movement just as much as the performer. And then you had that interaction with the background as well. You know, the camera's moving, which makes the background move the opposite direction. And that then became a whole other dimension within the frame, which was, you know, a really enjoyable contrast to Atmospheres where the background was almost consistently static and the only thing moving was the dancers. And it was like the split screen, you know, focused your mind so much on the movement, because, you know, the slightest little movement of the hand would creep into the joining frame, you know, and it really kind of accentuates that little movement. Whereas then in the longer piece, it was the repetition of the same movements over and over again, that it almost became trance-like.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think
We
we
were-
even used the term, like, we weren't sure what they left out, because it was quite interesting how they got to a point of like this blooper reel at the middle. But
Yeah.
I think it was a lot. It worked really well. It just brought me back into a world, into their world, you know, of flaws, which, you know, it's there in, like, I'm thinking of like Maiden Blossoms, or, you know, where things are sort of happening. And just the how I suppose, yes, I'm losing my thought, but like just just how they connected, how they sort of like
Yeah. I'll just, if I may jump in for a moment, we've got a few comments back from two of our filmmakers here. So Mary Stedman, who made Egress, is telling us that it was made in 2 days with edit in a beautiful island in Scotland. So very much it seems like that, you know, it fits in with what we were saying about it being this compressed moment. Gwendolyn Mitchell is a dancer from Cecilia. A lot was filmed by fellow dancers, and we did focus a lot on the choreography of the camera. Yeah, thank you for that, Gwendolyn. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And also, Owen was making the point, we did have such great conversation here in our virtual green room, but one of the other points that, Owen, you were making was how the editing process can also be the choreographic process as well.
Yeah,
It becomes choreographer.
Yeah, there's almost 3 elements. There's the movement of the dancer, and then there's the movement of the person with the camera, and then later comes the edit. And in some of those sequences, the edit was very, very, you know, very quick, but very controlled as well. And the edit was causing as much of the jumps within the frame, and the, you know, the background would be suddenly jumping over to here because of the edit. And then would switch to a slightly slower edit where the movement of the camera becomes more visible. Yeah, so like a mammoth undertaking, a lot.
Yeah. And I think that kind of those kind of very short cuts can also give a musical kind of percussiveness. They become something of the energy of the choreography as well, which in a longer phrase, for example, with our first 2 films that we saw tonight, which were very choreographed phrases, the choreography of the phrase is decided by the choreographer, has its high points and its low points and its moments of arrestation and so on. But in this case, the editing process can completely change the kind of meter almost of the phrase.
No, absolutely. It's, you know, because that's what we end up seeing is this movement, and you know, the dancer's moving one way and then they're moving the next, but it's not the same scene. It's been cut this way. So with very little movement, even from the dancer, you're creating a huge amount of movement through cutting. Yeah, and we spoke as well about the length of the piece, which was an interesting discussion we had.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, even on that, I'd be curious to hear from Gwendolyn, as it is in chat, about that process of generating information, because we were sort of trying to work out, because so much was happening in the edit and the choreography of the filming and the editing, how you articulate to the people who are in different places, this is what we're going to do, this is the dance. It's not like you could record this, send me your version of this here, and we pull it together. I'd be very curious to see how that works.
And Gwendolyn says, in relation to what we're talking about here, she says, yes, the director explained that the middle section, like the blooper section, was as a blurring of the line between, quote, performance and, quote, reality. How as women we must constantly perform for others, and this is a moment of our true selves. Yeah. So that's lovely. Thank you very much, Gwendolyn. It's really helpful to hear this.
And it's a really interesting section in the film that it does. A lot of the films have that pivotal moment, those center points, you know, where something, you know, jars, and you've got the before and the after, and this is this middle point, you know.
And
just while Gwendolyn's thinking about
that,
I was just going back to what we were saying about the length of it, and that yes, it's a long film, certainly, you know, compared to some of the other ones we've looked at tonight, but that in some ways it felt right because of the highly repetitive nature of the movements, the similarity in terms of the camera movement and so on, that it became this almost endless.
Yeah, we were making the comment, maybe
it mightn't feel right if it was just totally bookended with here's the beginning, here's the middle, and here's the end. It felt much more continuous.
Yeah,
because of the length.
It's the kind of, we were saying in our chat that it was almost like maybe it's still going on. Maybe they're still doing this somewhere.
Yeah.
And we were discussing the difference between that and, for example, Egress, which is compressed, and then this extended piece that could be still going on. And I just want to say, from my point of view as a person, dancer and choreographer, that I so appreciated the skill and training and the exquisiteness of the dancers. They were really wonderful and exceptional. So Gwendolyn has put in another comment. Oh yes, what a process. We worked together a lot on Zoom to learn and create the choreography. Some of us had the opportunity to work in person as well. Steve Mitchell says, Steve Mitchell Tube says, it felt alive. Yes, definitely. And yeah, the performance never ends.
Performance never ends. I like that. Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry, Colin.
No, I was just saying, because it's like that, it's, you know, with the context of that, where myself and Omer saying about how in a gallery, like how that idea of looping films and looping, you know, sort of thing, where they do, you know, the gallery or museum will put on a film at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and it will play continuously until 6 o'clock in the evening and continue to that. We got that feeling definitely from Cecilia's piece, that you step in, you're sort of like distrustful of or sort of uncertain where you're at until you start finding out your boundaries, you know, and you can, you know, see, okay, I can see the gestures, the repetitions here, you know.
Yeah, it was really and it feels like also the atmosphere as well, which was the same filmmaker as the Drill Hole project, that there was something about something very curated about the image. Certainly the indoor images were very, very sort of curated in a way that I could see a similar aspect to Jude Walton's work in the Drill Hole project. So there's something very interesting about all of these films bringing something, a different facet. And this is one of the things about Screen Dance or dance and film, is that it has so many aspects to it. It's such a fascinating art form.
Yeah, really, it's been a really interesting collection of very different films this evening. You know?
Absolutely. I suppose we should be thinking about drawing this to a close in the interest of our lovely audience from here and far, and also just to say that it's my pleasure to have Colin and Owen coming here and having this conversation about this art form, and also the audience that we have through our Zoom chat. And I know we will have continued audience over the coming months that this happens with this. We leave the links up live, or not live, they're up anyway, so people can access them and look at them, and we welcome that. And just want to say a huge thank you to everybody, and especially to the artists.
Yeah, well done to everyone involved. It was
yeah,
and
well done for bringing it all together, Adrian, because
thank you so much.
It's great, it's huge, it's wonderful. Like, you know, we sort of here talking about it and trying to make sense of it and make connections with all this stuff. So that, you know, well done. So
thank you, Colin.
Everybody.
I very much enjoy the idea that we can still find something to talk about in relation to the arts, but we will have another filming showing at live in person in Spotlight Dance Studios on Thursday, and we're live on Mermaid Arts Centre stage tomorrow night with performance dance, which is completely different to what we were looking at tonight. It will be just a series of beautiful dance pieces. So welcoming audiences and filmmakers, please keep doing this wonderful work, and all going well, if the stars allow, next year, please God. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye and take care.
Well done.